Hey everybody, Denver Riggleman here, former congressman from the 5th District of Virginia, former J6 technical advisor and NSA Air Force intelligence officer. We are welcoming back on hashtag COTS Coalition the sane Tara Setmayer. We're going to talk about her new Seneca Project, the importance of women voters, and some of the craziness in the primaries that happened this week. Cannot wait to talk to Tara. Let's kick some ass, buckle up, and let's get to work. Well, it is so good to see you again. I have to tell you,
Thank
I'm so
you.
happy.
Thank you, Denver. Things are a little different since the last time I saw you.
So different.
I've started a thing.
I know. And that's why I think with the 2024 election, why I wanted you on here so bad to welcome you back. And also, the first interview we had sort of went a little bit viral, like
I love that.
So I think it's so great you're on here, but you started something so bold and so new, and I'm sort of glad to be a part of it. Like, I'm not sort of glad, I'm incredibly glad to be a part of it. And it is called the Seneca Project. And I think with the 2024 election, with the importance of women, I would love for you to explain why you believe your incredible project as a founder of Seneca Project is going to actually change the world, which I think it can.
Oh my gosh, let's just talk about setting high expectations, Dan. Thanks. But you know what, though? We do think that women are going to save this democracy. We'll start here in the U.S. first, and then we can continue that shining city on a hill that we want our country to be. And one of our tagline for the Seneca Project is galvanize women, save democracy. So how did we get here? Well, first of all, thank you, Denver. You were one of the first people to support us, and we asked you to be on our advisory committee. You're a girl dad, and you're a kick-ass, and you're a good and decent person, and you understand what's at stake, not only for our country, but for women in this country. I mean, women's rights are under assault every day. If you don't believe me, just look at the headlines. And it has not stopped at Dobbs. I mean, this week was the 2-year anniversary of Roe being overturned with that Dobbs decision. We're waiting on the Supreme Court still to rule on that Idaho emergency room treatment decision, where Idaho state law has basically criminalized doctors from treating women in emergencies with reproductive health. They're actually airlifting women out of the state of Idaho to get care because of how restrictive the laws are there. It's insane. And they're coming for IVF, for contraception, for no-fault divorce, for God's sakes. These things are happening every day, and the Dobbs decision opened the door for that. And you've got a candidate in Donald Trump who seems to have no problem with any of this. He brags about putting the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe on the court. He brags about it going, well, because you go back to the states, let the states decide. We all know that's a code word, right? It's code. Let the states decide. Where do you draw the line with that? The states are completely out of control. And why are we relegating women to second-class citizens where we don't trust women to make their own decisions about their health care, their reproductive care, their futures? And women now have less rights than our grandmothers did. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. So my co-founder and I, Michelle Kinney, she was the former creative director at the Lincoln Project, and we were colleagues for 4 years together there. We got together and looked at the political landscape and said, no one's talking to moderate women. Who's talking to women and fully explaining what's at stake? Because I don't think a lot of people realize that, right? They think, oh, that's just crazy Idaho, or, that's Texas. We expect that stuff to come out of there. But this is going to scale up nationally if Donald Trump wins and if MAGA extremists are empowered. So the Seneca Project was born. We're bipartisan. We're targeting moderate women, particularly right of center women, the Haley voters that are out there going, we're not comfortable with the way the Republican Party is going. We're not voting for Donald Trump again. Where do we go? And they need that permission structure to take the next step. They know they don't want to vote for Trump or MAGA, but they still feel like, I don't know, I'm not a Democrat, I don't know, Biden. And it's like, listen, no one's asking you to become a Democrat. And no one says that President Biden is perfect, right? We all have our issues, but he's not Donald Trump, and he's not going to subjugate women. He has a lifetime record of supporting women's rights. And that's where it's going to come down to. Women in the swing states are going to make the difference in this election. And here we are to say, we welcome you. Come over. We don't care if you voted for Trump twice. We don't care. Nobody cares. We just make sure you don't vote for him again. And the ballot box is one last sacred place that women have right now where no one knows what choice they're going to make, and no one has to know. It's between you and your ballot, and it really needs to be for Joe Biden.
There's two things I want to ask you, but I think they sort of run into it. Where did you get the name for the Seneca Project? Where did Seneca come from? The second thing is there even room for moderate Republican women in today's GOP?
So, twofold question. First, the Seneca Project, where do we get the name? It was inspired by the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention, which is pretty much the birthplace of the women's rights movement. Women got together, they were fed up and had enough being treated as second-class citizens back then. They felt as though not having the right to vote, not having right to bodily autonomy, not having the right to work and make their own money. I mean, basic fundamental human rights women did not have. They were basically property of their husbands. And there were lots of smart, tough women back then that said, we've had it. We're not doing this anymore. And we're going to get together and put together our own Declaration of Independence. They call it the Declaration of Sentiments, that outlined a bunch of things that said, look, this seems pretty fair to us. Everyone talks about women's suffrage, right? The women's right to vote, and which took 72 years to finally get. And that was only partial victory because Black women didn't have equal rights to vote even in 1920. But the fact that it took 72 years to get that is insane. But it took the toughness and the coalition efforts of women, not only women, but of male allies and of abolitionists getting together, realizing that women's rights are human rights too. And so we cannot become this more perfect union if women do not have equality in this country. So we were shocked that the name Seneca really hadn't been used in this capacity. Michelle and I were thrilled when we found out we could do it, and we felt that it really encompassed the moment that we're in now. Just like it was a coalition effort then, and it took the toughness and the tenacity of women in this country to make sure that they were unrelenting, even when there were setbacks, even when they were told to wait, even when through the Civil War, through Reconstruction, through Woodrow Wilson. I mean, it took a lot of tenacity and fight for women to earn the right to vote and to earn equality in this country. We're in that moment again. I don't think anybody would have thought, if you look at the women who came before us and the fight that they put up, I don't think they would have thought we'd be in this moment in 2024 where we're actually going backwards. Let's remember that Dobbs is the first time that a right has been taken away from a group of citizens in this country. It has been taken away. That's the wrong direction. So that's how the Seneca Project name was born. We thought it was a great homage to the women that came before us. Yeah, and if you look at our logo, we have the 3 stars in our logo, which was created from scratch. We worked on that with the graphic designer, and the 3 stars represent, because we couldn't fit the 34 stars for women's suffrage. You thought it was a little too much, right?
Oh, I thought you meant the 34 indictments. I'm sorry, that was really crazy.
There could be that too. Yes,
I got very confused. Okay, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, the 34 guilty verdicts, but you're talking. Oh,
right.
I got you.
No.
Sorry.
Not that.
But
the 3 stars, right. I know, my God. The 3 stars represent the past, the present, and the future, because that's what we're doing as women at Seneca. We are honoring the fight of the past. We are in this moment here in the future, so in the present, so that we can set a future for our daughters and our daughters' daughters, one that we can be proud of.
I love it. And
is there room in the Republican Party? Yeah, there's a room in the Republican Party for moderate women. The answer is no. The current Republican Party does not allow for anyone that's not part of the cult. Period. I quit the Republican Party in November of 2020, before January 6th, but after Donald Trump refused to concede the election. I recognized that was a potential constitutional crisis. And if Republicans were willing to give him a pass on that, then nothing was sacred anymore. I mean, Republicans were the ones that ran around with their little pocket constitutions sanctimoniously talking about the Constitution and the sanctity of these things and blah, 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 right? And I actually believed it. I thought, the Constitution is important and we should honor it. But when Mitch McConnell and all the rest of those enablers who know better sat back and let Donald Trump say that there was election fraud and wouldn't concede from the East Room of the White House, what an affront. And I said, I'm done. There is no low that these guys won't go to. I can't be a part of this party anymore. I was a never Trumper from day one. I never supported Donald Trump. then I thought I could help change the party from within. I didn't want the crazies to take over. You needed the sane people. You needed a coalition of the sane to stay in the party to try to bring it back. But I realized there's no room for us anymore, unfortunately, for now. They have to lose. They have to lose. And the party has to burn to the freaking ground. And then when they're vanquished, when this MAGA cult scourge is vanquished, we can reassemble the sane conservatives like us and say, all right, how do we start over? But until then, there's no room. You saw what happened. You're not in the party. Adam Kinzinger is out. Liz Cheney, for God's sakes, is an apostate. So you think that moderates have a place? What's moderate about the Republican Party today? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely
and
nothing.
I feel like, don't you feel like, who's that Trump rapper? Forgatio Blow? It looks like a blowfish, honestly.
I have no idea. They're all unserious people, but I'll take your word for it.
I'm wondering if this rapper Forgatio Blow is going to do a song with Kid Rock about how great 1848 is. It's like I almost feel like there's going to be legislation put forward by the Freedom Caucus. It's called the 1848 Act to Save America. I mean, that's how nuts I think that it's happened. But they
would love it. Denver, they would love it for us to go back to the 1840s, right? Because white Christian men were in charge of everything, and everybody else was subjugated to second-class citizens. They're projecting that. They would love it because they'd be in power again.
And listen, going back to the 1840s, there was this incredible thing, about something that I'd love to go back in history. I can't think of any African Americans who want to go back in history, right? In America.
Byron Donalds, apparently.
Byron Donalds definitely. He loves some Jim Crow, but they're so stupid, right? It's like somehow they've replaced their masks, their oxygen masks. They put Elmer's glue in them, and that's what they do every night is a little bit of snort fun. But I think as we're going forward in this, the thing is when you talked about crazy and that there's no room for moderate women. When I was looking at the primaries, this is absolutely why I think the Seneca Project is so important and why I don't know how you got this idea, but it's a bit brilliant. What happens when you see the Democrats self-selecting their crazies out and the Republicans doubling down on crazies? You saw that yesterday, the Justice Democrats just got wiped off the board, right, from the moderate Democrats. So it seems like they're trying to stay at least having some room for moderates in the Democratic Party. Because there's some nuts in the Democratic Party. But again, like I've always said, the GOP is in a hold my beer moment. I don't know if there's a one-to-one comparison there. But you saw the double down.
I don't think so.
No, but you saw the double down on Republican candidates like the Lauren Boeberts and stuff like that actually being elected again. So, and you saw here John McGuire beating Bob Good. Bob Good's nuts, but people don't understand John McGuire is crazier. He is a Trump-endorsed candidate who took selfies of himself at J6. So when you're seeing what happened in the primaries yesterday, does that just reaffirm your belief that the Seneca Project, looking at the sane, that the women are the leader of the pro-reality army, number one? Number two, doesn't the primary cycle just reinforce what you've been saying, that the GOP has gone so far crazy that the only place for moderates might be, sadly, the Democratic Party or running independent, which isn't a great thing? I mean, what do we do when we just keep me and you are former Republicans, Tara? It doesn't even make sense to me anymore. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I know. We're politically homeless, right? We're politically homeless. And that's no disrespect to my Democratic friends or the Democratic Party. It's just that I feel that there are, I'm not necessarily ready to take the step becoming a Democrat. I will vote Democrat because that's the way in which we can express our political agency because of the two-party system. In a lot of states, you can't, there's closed primaries. So you have to pick one or the other in order to vote in a primary. I'm a big proponent of opening primaries up. I think that helps to filter out the extremists. But that's a bigger conversation about kind of how we change our election system to open things up a bit so that you're not forced to choose between extremists on the left or extremists on the right. And looking at the primary results, frankly, since 2020, 2022, moderates have been winning, is particularly in the Democratic Party. You know,
that's right.
In the Democratic Party, and on the Republican side, you're seeing the crazy triple down on MAGA, because a lot of times, like I said, when you have these closed primaries, you get the Boeberts and and the Marjorie Taylor Greens, and redistricting. That's also the reason why Republicans are so keen on going after congressional redistricting, because they want to gerrymander people into these safe districts so you can keep the loons, and they don't get voted out. It's nuts. But when we thought about the Seneca Project, really what inspired it was a conversation with a friend of ours who sent an article about Nikki Haley voters and about how Republican families are raising Democratic daughters. That, a lot of times people, and a lot of times people, your political affiliation is influenced greatly by your parents, right? Of course. And in this case, you have a generation of young women who want no parts of the Republican Party. I wonder why. And looking at their Republican parents going, we're not with that. We're not comfortable with the extremism. And they're going the other way. And then we saw how successful Nikki Haley was, even after she dropped out of the race, with people voting in protest of Donald Trump and MAGA, but looking for somewhere to go. And we said, not only is this an opportunity, these are persuadable voters, but just the fact that women's rights are just so blatantly under assault, you can't ignore this. Yes, the economy is important. Yes, foreign policy is important. Yes, democracy is important. All of these things are tied in together. Women losing their right to be able to make their own healthcare choices is a part of economic choices. It's part of democracy. It's part of our promise for freedom and equality for everyone. It's all tied in together. And women make more than 50% make up more than 50% of the voting population. I think it's kind of important that we stand in solidarity here and say, we are not going to take being subjugated to second-class citizens and let MAGA take this over. So there was really no infrastructure to target moderate women because we're all so caught up in our partisan tribes. And we said, we just want to have a conversation and present the stakes to those moderate women so that they understand that they do have somewhere to go. It doesn't mean that you're becoming now a Democrat and you're part of that team and blah, blah. No, you're part of Team Sane and Team Democracy and Team Women's Rights. That's the Democratic Party. And that's President Biden, who's a good and decent man, who isn't under criminal indictment, who hasn't cheated on every wife he's ever had, who isn't a terrible father, who isn't someone who denigrates women and brags about grabbing them by their genitals. He spent his lifetime supporting women's rights, supporting the Violence Against Women's Act, and he's someone who, in his presidency, for the first time, has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into women's health care. There is no comparison.
I never thought there'd be a bumper sticker, where I'm voting for the person that doesn't grab women by their genitals.
Mm-hmm.
That's would be my first bumper sticker.
Or
right?
that's not convicted of defamation, of civil rape, right? The E. Jean Carroll case. I mean, what are we doing here? Ladies, come on.
What are we doing here? And then, also it's to the point that the people who that really believe that life begins at erection are the ones supporting Donald Trump and other GOPers, right? We're going to have serial numbers on condoms. I mean, what are we doing here, right? Are we going to have a recycling movement for condoms? How's this going to work for everybody? God. And,
I don't mean to laugh because it's not funny. You know what I mean? It's funny because life begins at erection. That's the first time I've ever heard that. And it's freaking hilarious.
Well, but but that's what you think about Bob Good. One of the reasons I got beat is because he wanted to do away with birth control. And I'm like, I think that's pretty important, right? When it comes to, especially to everybody. I mean, women should have a right to control their lives, how they want to control their lives. And, I was Republican and I had to dance that dance because I would always say that life, that was for exceptions for rape, incest, and health of the mother, which identified me as pro-choice.
Right.
Because they said, we have to say life of the mother. If you say health of the mother, it means that they can get out of it no matter what. And I would not change. And then I noticed that maybe I'm not nuts. I don't think that it's ridiculous with 3 daughters, right? That I would go down that path of that life begins at erection or life begins at conception at 1 second, or that, a condom will send you to hell, or that birth control will send you to hell. Especially with my oldest daughter.
IVF now.
Well, my
IVF
oldest daughter
now.
It is. My oldest daughter's utilizing IVF right now. You think that I would, she wants to have a second child and she's having a lot of issues. But my 3 daughters came to me and, I was always a center right guy. And there's no way, as soon as the IVF stuff come out, I got a call from my oldest daughter, like, who are these people? Who are these idiots? So here's the thing. When you're talking about, I want to ask you the tough question because, gosh, you're going to be like, if you don't want to answer this, that's okay. Is this to a point that we have the Seneca Project and Modern Women. Do we have a point where you're also fighting this war on women based on Christian nationalism?
Oh, 100%. The Christian nationalism is what's driving the extremism. These people are driving the crazy bus. Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, is a Christian nationalist. I call him Commander Johnson for those folks who have read The Handmaid's Tale or watched the series. Okay, that's how it starts with people like Mike Johnson in power. Commander Johnson. They have an irrational religious belief. They can believe whatever the hell they want to believe. That's their prerogative in America. You get to believe whatever you want. But what you don't get to do is foist that belief on everybody else. And that's what they're trying to do, because what they want to do by taking these rights away from women is not based on science. It's not based on natural law. It's not based on what we claim to believe as a democratic society. It's not based on any of those things. It's based on their Christian nationalist extremism. And I come from an evangelical background. I used to attend an evangelical church. And I can tell you that I want no parts of that movement anymore after the hypocrisy that we've seen come out of there and the extremism where they are justifying and rationalizing violence, overtaking the Constitution, and subjugating women all under the name of God told me so. I'm sorry, but that's not the God I serve. And I think God is not pleased. They're going to have to answer for this. We're not the apostates. I can tell you that right now, Denver. We're not.
No, we're not.
So,
And I feel like with these idiots, they think that God's on a party line and all of them have a direct link to the supernatural. And they use this as a grift. I always said that prophet is spelled Profit in the Christian nationalist circles because it's a money-making grift. Right. And I also, and Doug's heard me say this, when you're talking about this Christian nationalism sort of stream that's happening right now, and I was raised Mormon,
yeah.
and you talked about what's happening to moderates. When you're talking about the crazies that have been elected and the Democrats actually rolling out the moderates, I know I'm sort of bringing this full circle, that what happened to me was after the same-sex wedding I officiated, they came out with bumper stickers that said it's okay to be gray rather than it's okay to be gay. And they had Robert E. Lee and Confederate flags at the church where I was kicked out with only 2,500 voters. That's going back to the 1860s. You're going back to 1848 with the Seneca Project.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about women, are we? Aren't we also talking about racism? Aren't we also talking about it seems to be a bunch of white males with some crazy white females on the side, like the Lauren Bobitz or Marjorie Taylor Greens, those kind of individuals that are so hypocritical. There's no way they live religiously based on the affairs that they've had or the groping that they like to do in theaters and kids' movies. So the thing is, as you're going forward on the Seneca Project, I feel like the Seneca Project isn't just about women. I think it's even bigger. I think what you're doing is calling out that we can't go backwards in a society based on a president who's a convicted felon, somebody held civilly liable for the worst things to do to women, and somebody who has identified himself as somebody who likes to accost women in the genitalia.
Yeah, brags about
this it. That's the person that people are voting for. I think the Seneca Project is not just for 2024.
You're 100% right.
I think this is I think this is a generational war against honestly xenophobia, racism, and really the war that you have against women on a certain subset. And I will tell you the people that are Christian nationalists immediately. Are you ready for this, Tara? It's the people who overuse black hair dye products on their beard and on their hair. Yeah. Everybody wants to look like Matt Walsh. And I'm wondering if hair dye has contributed to the mental decline in the US with these idiots in their 40s who want to look ridiculous with like a black mane of hair with a black beard, right? And then rail against women and rail against homosexuals and rail against anybody who doesn't use black hair dye. That's where I think we're at right now, Tara. What do you think about that theory that black hair dye is causing mental illness among white males across the United States?
Well, that would explain it better than what we're seeing now. At least there would be like a chemical reason for it. Look, the black hair dye theory is interesting, except that I would think maybe it was the orange tanner that they're trying to replicate.
It could be both.
And so many of them are using this like shoe polish shit that Trump shellacks on his face. It's all a mess. But the common denominator here is that they all seem to have a certain disdain for women. And
yes.
As we know, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, the wonderful historian and professor, she's on our advisory committee also. And we really wanted to have someone like her who understands in the context of history, the role that authoritarianism and fascism and anti-democratic movements have when it comes to women's rights. And she makes the point that women have been on the front lines marching against this type of oppression for a century. Because they know as women's rights go, so goes our democracy. And there's a common denominator here. They come for the women, just, because they know that women are a powerful force when we're in solidarity. So weak men are scared of strong women. And these are weak men, all of them. They're all weak. And they see women and our strength and our role in society as a threat to their place. And it's like, get over yourselves, because women, you can't have a free society that thrives without women's equality. So
I agree.
They can all go to hell. They can all go to hell with that. We're not, like I said, women have had enough. And what happened with women, the coalition that women were a part of, it was bigger than just women. It was abolitionists. It was men. And we welcome that. Same thing here for us at Seneca Project. That's why we have folks like you involved with us. We're not saying that men don't count. We need male allies, particularly the girl dads. And that's also a cohort that we're talking to, because we found in research that the bond between dads and their daughters is the strongest, most persuadable bond, even more so than between spouses. So when a daughter goes to her dad and says, "Dad, I'm scared. What is happening in our country? I need you to make the right decision to help protect me." That touches dads right here in ways that no other relationship can. So the girl dads out there, you guys play a role in this too. The male allies play a huge role in this. We need you guys to vote for Joe Biden as well, because for your daughter, if nothing else. I'll give you actually two quick anecdotes to back that up. One of my students at Harvard, when I was a fellow there, she went into the military after she graduated Harvard. And her dad was a state Republican official for a long time. And she told me that in 2020, she went to her dad in tears saying, "Dad, how could you possibly vote for Donald Trump? You want this man to be my commander in chief? You say that you're proud of me for serving our country, and I'm proudly serving our country. But you are in a position to vote for someone that actually respects me and respects my service. This man can't possibly be my commander in chief. How would you want that?" And she said that her dad had never really considered that. And that made the difference. So
it's a powerful argument,
right? I mean, it's really, and our first ad is called A Time for Choosing. And if folks haven't seen it, please go to senecaproject.us and check out our ad, and where we talk about this. We use the Reagan term, a time for choosing, on purpose, because it is a time for choosing. We are at an inflection point in this country where we have to make a choice. It's a binary choice, folks. And it's between Trump or Biden. And it's not about left or right at this point. It's about what's right and wrong. And we lay out what's at stake here for that. When our ad aired, one of my husband's colleagues, and my husband's in federal law enforcement, and so these are a bunch of big tough guys, right? But one of my husband's colleagues sent him a message and said, "I watched your wife's ad with my daughter, and she turned to me and said, 'See, Dad, I'm trying to tell you, this is what it's about for us in this election.'" And he said that it didn't really hit home until he saw our ad and his daughter's reaction to it, turning to her father and saying, "Dad, this is what's at stake." And I said, it gave me chills. It's giving me chills now, because it's showing that our messaging is resonating. And that makes me very proud. Michelle and I wrote the ad ourselves. It's the first time we'd ever written an ad. I'm not an ad writer. She was on production side, but she came up with the idea. We worked that script together, and it's just the beginning. And we're hoping that people will support us so we can get more of these hard hitting ads where we're talking directly to women and to those girl dads in the swing states. The more giving them that permission structure that it's more than just being against Donald Trump. You have to take the actionable step of voting for Joe Biden because our lives depend on it.
Well, there's more women in the coalition that's saying than men right now, it seems.
Yes. Well, women will save women, galvanize women, save democracy. That's our tagline at the Seneca Project.
I do think women do save democracy, and I hope that more fathers listen to their daughters, as we go forward in this. Listen, I've changed a lot. Being in meetings with Donald Trump that I've been in, being behind the door, there was a reason I turned away pretty quickly because you think that a lot of what he said was bluster, but there's no nuance on Donald Trump. What he says in public is what he says behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. And actually behind closed doors, he's worse.
Worse, that's right.
He's worse. So let's not pretend that we don't have a man running for president right now who's not maybe the lowest form of scum we've ever seen, maybe since Nixon, to run for president of the United States. And by the way, do we want daughters living in a world where Matt Gaetz is making policy on their lives? Do we want a world, where Donald Trump is making policy, or Ronnie Jackson, or Jim
Stephen Miller,
or Stephen Miller, or oh God forbid Stephen Miller? I mean, or people like Dan
Steve Bannon, or Steve Bannon, or Charlie Kirk, or these people who out here, right? They think that they joke about women having the right to vote and how wonderful it would be if they didn't anymore. They're not joking, people. They're not joking.
They're not joking. No, you should not be supporting anybody with a Nixon tattoo or somebody that keeps their Venmo public. So, I think these are the things that, that we're dealing with. But Tara, what a superstar to start the Seneca Project. I am proud to be on the advisory board. I think are there any other men on the advisory board right now? Or was I
not yet? You're the first and only for now, but we are obviously, we just launched publicly and we are welcoming men who are interested in coming to join our fight here because like I said, we welcome those allies and in our bipartisanship, this threat that faces American women really does transcend party lines. And we want to make sure any way we can communicate that, the more the merrier. So, there's a couple of other men, but we kind of like having you, Denver. You're our favorite girl dad. So, but we'll
well, you know how I'm sane? You know how you know I'm sane? No black hair dye. Look.
Yeah. I was going to say we know you're sane because you've married a amazing woman who makes amazing bourbon and you got 3 cool daughters and you're proud of it and served our country with honor and distinction. So that's how we know you're sane.
Oh my gosh. You just gave me goosebumps. Thank you so much. And I have 3 granddaughters now. I'm the lead of a strong woman army also who will kick people's asses if they need to.
That's right.
And
that's why
you are. Oh gosh, I feel all warm inside. But no, you're the best, and I want to thank you for coming on Coalition of the Sane and being the leader of the pro-reality army through the Seneca Project. You rock.
Thank you, Denver. I appreciate it, and I hope everybody goes and checks out Seneca Project at senecaproject.us. Donate if you want to help support and invest in our mission, and please follow us on all our socials so you can get our up-to-date first ads and rapid response and all of our commentary about what's going on. And it's at Seneca Project US.
Boom.